Greetings, greetings. We got a jam-packed show today. We're going to start off with news from Apple. CEO Tim Cook has recently stepped down. He has been replaced by a John Ternus. We're going to hear some reporting on it and then talk about it.
Apple, the company, has announced that John Ternus will be the company's next chief executive. Tim Cook stepping down. Mr. Ternus is currently the SVP of.
First and foremost, I do want to add Tim Cook did a phenomenal job. I know a lot of folks were, waiting on his departure. You kind of could see it. The writing was on the wall. But his tenure was absolutely phenomenal. He brought the company to a $4 trillion profit margin. He took over from Steve Jobs, the visionary who started it. But he definitely did not disappoint and made his shareholders very, very, very happy.
Hardware engineering. Now, my gut says that that's a very tedious sounding title that carries an enormous amount of power.
Now, John Ternus, though, he's an engineer. Tim Cook was great with logistics. He simplified the product line, especially during COVID and all that good stuff, and got everything running like a smooth oil machine. But this new guy, we're going to hear more on him. He's an engineer by trade, so he's really in tune with the products. So we'll talk about
it. Tim Cook, who will be stepping down as CEO, will become Apple's executive chairman. The transition will take place on September the 1st.
That's excellent. They're keeping Tim Cook around. Keep that talent there. That's great for continuity. We'll get to it.
Brian Stelter is with me. I have to, regardless, Brian, of the end of an era nature, which we can get into at some point, the smoothness, the elegance by which this has been done, compared to, say, the Disney Bob Iger shambles, or the or even our own companies.
Well, Bob Iger, he caught a stray there.
Had a few shambles in our times, but this is grande elegante.
I think Bob Iger's been doing good with the whole sports over there at Disney. The parks is a whole different story, but as far as their streaming platforms and content, I think he righted the ship on that.
Right, Apple wants to get this right. It's one of the most important moves in the company's, look, so far this century, right? Yeah, Tim Cook very seamlessly took over for Steve Jobs. Now you have John Ternus taking over. And if you looked at the press in recent months, the trade press about Apple, Ternus's name was being signaled. He was in line. It was clear that he was likely to be tapped. We didn't know it was going to come today, but we knew this might happen at some point.
That must be mentioned as well. Tim Cook was an outstanding forward leaning to the administrations, kind of keeping them happy no matter if it was the Biden administration or the Trump administration. He did a really good job at advocating and basically, kept the company going through the differences of visions with the administrations.
Soon. And it comes, as you know, Richard, at a time when there's been an investor narrative, a media narrative, fairly or unfairly, about Apple falling behind in AI, leaning too heavily on those incredible iPhone sales year after year. Bloomberg recently quoted sources saying, John Ternus knows he needs bolder products and a strong approach to AI. So today, Cook, in a statement, calling him a brilliant engineer and thinker, someone focused on every possible way we can make things better, bolder, more meaningful, and more beautiful. He's the perfect person.
Tim Cook was your safe guy. I give him a lot of credit because, Apple, they were getting the reputation of basically waiting for products to show that they were successful, and then Apple would basically put their version out, and typically it would be a more efficient and better product, But I think John Ternus I think he's going to do great, but he may want to be careful. This is just my prediction, and feeding into the hype. One thing uh, Tim Cook. His products, they didn't flop. The Apple Vision Pros, that's kind of some contradictions on that, whether that was a successful product or not. But I don't have them, but those who have, they say they're a good product. It's just half baked, kind of. It's just not there. They're not there yet. But that was one of the products he kind of get nicks on. But he came out with the EarPods. The AirPods. Those were extremely successful. And the Apple Watch. It's one of they coined it as one of the greatest selling watches. More than Swiss watches, but they're also cheaper than those. But nevertheless, it was a great invention. It's a wearable. I wear one every day. I like the health aspect. And the point being was Tim Cook was very, very safe. He would let Samsung, for instance, drop a product, and then Apple would basically roll out their version of it. And they did a good job at that, kind of playing behind, kind of surveying the scene, and then dropping their product. As far as forward leaning with Mr. Ternus, he knows what he's doing, but I would be careful because at the end of the day, he's still going to have to make the shareholders happy. So bringing out these new products, it can be risk involved.
Job. So far, though, Apple stock down just a little bit in after-hours trading. Maybe that just signifies people expected some new CEO relatively soon, and they expected John Ternus for the job. But that's the news so far, Richard.
Brian, I'm grateful. Brian Stelter, our chief media. There, Lance Ulanoff's with me.
I hope Apple stock does dip just a bit. That way I can pick some up, because I'm pretty sure if Ternus is successful, he's going to raise stock shares, I'm sure, especially if he's going to be bold and bringing back like the cutting edge of AI, because they're kind of falling behind in that. If he's going to champion that, then it's going to be nothing but a uptick for the Apple stock, I'm sure.
Editor at large at Tech Radar. Look, Lance, this whole thing has gone full circle. I remember, of course, when Tim took over, it was Steve Jobs passed.
Yes.
And we had those first 2 or 3 years, was Tim up to the job? He didn't have a polo sweater. He didn't look like that. He wasn't as cool. Was he up to the job? And again and again and again, that was the question that was, well, clearly he was. I mean, it took it to the most valuable company in the world. And now we're asking the same questions. Plus ça change, les mêmes choses, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Ternus is certainly up for the job. We've been talking about John Ternus taking over for, I don't know, the last year. There've been inklings around it. Cook, there were internal, we knew that there were certainly internal talks about the succession plan, but Cook was basically, the outlook was like, I'm sticking around as long as I can do this. He wanted to stick around. He just went through Apple's 50th anniversary where he gave so many interviews. But at the big kickoff at Grand Central, the people who were there was Tim Cook, John Ternus, and the head of global marketing. Those were the 3 heads of state who were there. Cook took the stage briefly, didn't say anything. And at the most recent, biggest product launch they've had in a while, which was...
Diplomat was the word I was looking for. Tim Cook was a very good diplomat for the company, no matter what views administrations had or dealings with China, India. He got that going under his watch, where they made the Apple footprint more in India. He was just a great champion of those type of dealings. Again, all boils back to logistics.
Book Neo, there wasn't even Tim Cook in the video. So I think there were all these signs. But as far as Ternus being up for the job, he understands Apple. He's obviously a really hardware guy. Apple's last
If the new product, the Apple MacBook Neo, is kind of a precursor to what Ternus has going on, and that's a very good sign. Those things are selling like hotcakes. It came in at an affordable price. It served space in the market where Apple was not at. The Chromebook, the cheaper laptop space. So if that's an indicator, then we're headed in the right direction.
For 6 years have been all about services, massive business, makes a...
Another thing, Tim Cook really revitalized Apple or started a lot of their services industries, with Apple TV, with the fitness service, services. That's a whole new revenue stream for the already iPhone users. I don't have the number of how many there are out there, but there's a lot. So he definitely streamlined that and got that added revenue stream for the company as well.
Money, Tim Cook's done the right thing, but it doesn't feel innovative. It doesn't feel exciting. So maybe it's time for a little excitement, hardware excitement under John Ternus.
Does it matter name recognition to the general public? And I mean, well, I'm going to challenge you. You're not moving. You're not budging. You're not budging on this. I'll tell you what I'm asking because companies rely on cachet. They rely on cool in this particular case, and to a certain extent, do you need to have somebody who's known? You're still going to say no.
I'm glad you said that, because you're right. It does rely on cool, but you know what's cool? You know what has the cachet? Apple. That's been the thing. That's the reason why Tim Cook was able to step in 2011 and the company didn't implode, because it had been baked into the company that built the iPod and the iPhone and the iPad. It had that for going back, decades. And I think that it's intrinsic to the company and not necessarily the leadership. And I will say that Tim Cook, over the years, he kind of went from, who's Tim Cook, to, oh my gosh, it's Tim Cook. Come here, let me have a selfie.
Exactly. Now, I just wonder, one other thing about this whole business. How would you grade Cook's tenure?
B plus to A. I think that
I'm glad you weren't marking my homework.
Look, from a
yeah, I would give him no less. I would give him an A minus, no less. I mean, come on. Apple was not, when Steve Jobs had it, they were up and coming, they were established, but he took them to heights that maybe Steve Jobs knew, but he took them to heights that I don't know if everybody was expecting.
Business standpoint, he has grown this company in ways that I don't even think Steve Jobs could have imagined. But the fastest growing part of the business, as I said before, is services. There have been some, Apple Watch, the focus on health, really, really exciting, innovative, probably one of his signature moves. Vision Pro, AI, I think that's where we see some stumbles, and the AI is really kind of hung around, is not the most important technological innovation, and Tim Cook hasn't quite solved it for Apple.
Now, Lance, I want to finish just on a more personal note with Cook, of course. He came out in 2014 in an article as gay, and it was, I mean, everybody.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. Tim Cook's sexuality, there's probably people out there now that still don't know his sexuality. He's definitely a businessman. I don't see where that even plays a part in the equation. Let's see what this gentleman has to say.
So it wasn't like, anybody who knew, but it was considered a major moment just because A, he said it, B, he made out how important he was, and then he left it alone and got on with what he was supposed to do, which was run Apple. He didn't sort of wear it on his sleeve on a daily basis. And I think that is something that he advanced the LGBT agenda in the corporate world quite considerably.
Yeah, I think it was a really important moment for business, for the tech industry, for leadership. I think Tim Cook's sort of casual openness, like you said, people knew, but it wasn't something that people were like, so what? And then he said it because I think he felt that it maybe would help other people. That was fantastic. I think that in recent years, there have been some questions about, where Tim Cook has stood as far as support of diverse communities because of his seeming closeness to the Trump administration. But for the first time, you noticed he answered that question in recent weeks about why he talks to them. And I've always said this to people. If you look at Apple, they've kept their DEI. And I think that's because of Tim Cook, a red line that he's going to continue to have that as part of the company.
And I'll tell you something, it's very easy for everybody else to criticize when you cozy up to the administration or whatever, but you don't have the responsibility of hundreds of thousands.
So that's the reporting on that. Apple does have one of their events coming up here shortly. I'm pretty sure Mr. Ternus, he's going to unveil the folding Apple phone. So that's probably going to be the first product launch under his watch. I think the folding Apple phone, again, Sam, there are already existing folding smartphones out there, but now Apple's going to, they kind of waited, sat on the bench a little bit, surveyed the landscape, and they're going to put their take on it. I think it's going to be a seller. I think it's going to be expensive. So there's going to be that, only certain individuals are going to be, having, the latest foldable iPhone or the newest. So that's going to be interesting. I wouldn't predict that particular phone selling as much as the normal iPhones, but time will tell. So definitely will continue to keep up with Apple, keep up with the stock, and see if it dips a bit. I know it's in the 200 range now. I'm going to keep my eye on it, probably pick up some quarter shares and try to ride this train. So we wish Mr. Ternus nothing but the best, and we'll continue to monitor, one of America's most highly valued companies.